And we're live. Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. Today we are going to be talking about two chapters of the Never-Ending Story. We are going to be talking about Morla the Aged, which you'll remember from the movie, including the scene with Artax that is on the thumbnail. And also Ygramul the Many, who is not mentioned in the book, but is how he meets Falcor in the book. We'll be getting to all of that here in just a moment. Hey, Black Unit Griffin, good to see you. It's a little behind schedule today. I'm just now getting my beard braided. Hopefully I completed shaving. Okay, so like I said, we are starting on Morla the Aged, and then we're also going to be discussing Ygramul the Many. Yep, it's Wednesday. We're doing the book club, so though been kind of a long day. I was a little sleepy. Had to take a nap before the live, so I wound up a little, a couple minutes late. But here we are. We have one beer today. It's a Rock Creek Dry Cider Spiced Apple Cider. Let's see how that tastes. All right. So like gluten-free Okanagan apples. Anyways, yeah. So that's the beer. Let's see. So a few updates. I caught a sea cucumber the other day on my fishing pole, and we actually ate that. That was pretty cool. Surprisingly good. Let's see. I feel like there's a little more to get into before we start here, but like usual, here in just a moment, I'm going to paraphrase the story of Ygramul, or Morla the Aged One, which we have seen before, and then we will paraphrase the second chapter, which is Ygramul the Many. It's kind of fun where we have Ygramul the Many when I was just talking about Legion last Saturday. Okay, so when we last left off, Atreyu had been sent on his mission and didn't know where to go. Good evening, Romstead. Good to see you. I just want to pull up the thing here for just a minute. I feel like I'm forgetting something. 3 Ravens. 3 Ravens. That's pretty cool. We have a lot of ravens here on the island. I can do a bunch of owly hand sounds. And when the ravens first started doing it, I started like making noises back to them when they were cawing. And it was kind of funny because for a while there really interested them. And I became almost like a bit of a fad amongst the ravens, because they would come to the house and start cawing at the house until I came out and did the and they get all excited and caw back and forth at each other and then like fly off like, oh my gosh, see, I told you this human thinks it's an owl. And they all had to come and get me to do it. And then for a while they would come and caw at me to make me do that sound. But that was the first time I came up to visit. And then I left. and they never really forgave me for it because they've never been quite as interested since. But for a while there, they were quite fascinated. But I guess the novelty wore off because they're not all that interested in me these days. Hello, my love. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started then with the paraphrasing. Like I said, I wanted to, hold on. I got distracted. I wanted to get down to where we were. I believe we started today on page 53. Oops, not way too far. It's 225. Yeah, I can just punch in what number I want. Page 53. Okay, that's a little bit into the Morla thing. I just wanted to. Oh, that's right. That's what I almost forgot about was the. Oh, hold on. Okay, so Karen the Black Centaur. It talks about him having a really hard time sleeping and being stressed about what's going on with the nothing, but that he never returns to the back. That he doesn't go back to the ivory tower. It tells about him going on his own journey, but that's already be told another time. That same night, Atreya rode to the foot of the Silver Mountains. It was almost morning when he stopped to rest and grazed a while and drank water from a small mountain stream. Wrapped himself in his cloak and slept for a while. The first day they crossed the Silver Mountains, the road and trail was known to them and they made quick progress. And he had dried buffalo meat to eat and some grass seeds. Bastion, when he hears about that, eats some of his own food. But only small pieces, like he's like carefully conserving his sandwich. And Atreyu has a dream. And this dream is about the purple buffalo. And each night he has more and more dreams about this purple buffalo. But in each dream, he can't quite get to the buffalo. Something prevents him every time for several nights. And he keeps trying to hunt this buffalo, but he can't get close to it. And then he finally gets close to it, and he can't shoot his bow because his fingers are stuck to the strings. And then finally, he has a dream where he gets to the buffalo. Oh yes, he goes by the Tower of Erebor, where the inhabitants keep and store starlight. And they're not really able to help him. They're small glass-like creatures. Like I said, he's not able to catch the buffalo. And then he goes through the same place where the messengers met in the beginning, where he comes across three Bart trolls. The three Bart trolls show him the nothing. This is when Atreyu sees the nothing, but they only take him to it from a distance. And he is quite delicious. Oh, you must mean the sea cucumber. Yeah, it was actually pretty good. It's a strange process. You cut the head off and the tail off, and then you like put the knife inside and slice the whole thing down. Then you got to fold it inside out, and the meat of the sea cucumber is inside the sea cucumber. It's like on the inside. You got to flip it out. You got to flip it inside. You got to turn it inside out, and flay it from the inside. It's a interesting process, but it was quite good. You flash cook it like squids. You only cook it for like 30 seconds, and it puffs up, and it's real nice. Anyways, so this is where Atreyu first sees the nothing. is oh, right. So anyways, okay. So yeah, he gets the bark. He speaks to the bark trolls. They show him the nothing, and when he sees it, and then they actually disappear. When he meets the bark trolls, parts of them are missing, and it is because the nothing touched them, right? And then even as he's watching the nothing, because they have gotten that close to it again, they wind up disappearing all the way. But once you've been touched by the nothing, even if you escape, the bit of the nothing that is on you stays with you and makes it slowly eat you away, even if you get away from the nothing itself. Once it's in you, once it's on you, it stays on you until you completely disappear. Like the let's see. Yeah, like the scene. So eventually, he has another dream about the purple buffalo. And in this one, the purple buffalo speaks to him. And this is who tells him to go to Morla, the aged one, which again is different than the book. I don't remember how he decides to go to Morla in the book. I think think it doesn't explain it. So, um, right. You are gonna make me blush, Necrophilus. Right. So, um, what was I saying? Yeah, he sees nothing. Okay, so the purple buffalo, when it finally speaks to him, it rewards him for not having killed him, the buffalo. And which is ironic because each night he he is trying to kill the buffalo and can't. But then the buffalo rewards him for his failure, essentially, which this is symbolic of the of him losing the smaller quest, right? He um Yeah, he lost the smaller quest of the hunt and put him on this bigger quest. But then the understanding that he has gotten from his normal life, his chop wood, carry water, is answering his question, telling him how to get farther, taking your normal life and the lessons from it to expand you into that higher thing. Because chop wood, carry water has more meaning, right? And I know we just keep going to chop wood, carry water, but it's a perfect metaphor for what I'm talking about here. He is just starting up the mountain. But if you walk the mountain, the path that you walked every day will tell you how to walk that path in some ways, right? Okay, so he is told this by the buffalo, and then he wakes up. Bastion hears this clock strike 12 and thinks that everyone will be going down to the gym for the day, and he thinks about how much he hated dodgeball. Now, this particular thing, I just wanted to talk about this for a moment. Now, I suppose I'm unique in this, but for me, when I was a kid, because I was a Treyu, right? Or not a Treyu, but Bastion, and that I had no friends. The difference is I didn't let them pick on me like as much as I could avoid it, but I got picked on a lot. I got harassed a lot, made fun of. They learned pretty quick not to actually touch me. But dodgeball, oh, I can still hear the sound of that ball hitting their little faces. Yeah, dodgeball when I was a kid, this was one of my revenge moments. This because I've always been fairly good physically. Like I've had good hand-eye coordination, you know. And so when dodgeball came when I was in elementary school, this was my chance because everybody wanted to hit me. They all didn't like me. They'd all try to throw the ball at me. I would catch that thing, whip it around, and smack it right into their face. Oh, I love that sound when I was a kid. That was that was the sound of my vengeance. But Atreyu, unfortunately, doesn't have that benefit. And, like a lot of people, dodgeball was an extremely difficult activity for them. And he thinks a bit about how rough that is. And then the story continues back to Atreyu. He rides northward, ever northward, to an unleaden, twilight-filled sky. At night, the northern lights played across the sky. One morning, when time seemed to be standing still in the murky light, he looked out from hilltop and finally glimpsed the swamp of sadness, which is where Morla lives. And he is warned about the swamp of sadness. And this is the part that we all remember. And our tracks even ask before they get in, are we going in there, Master? And remember, our tracks is symbolic of a part of Atreyu. He is symbolic of that quest, the lesser quest, the quest to catch the buffalo, the quest that he has been taken away from. But also, Artax is separate from Atreyu because only one of them has the Orin. Now, this is something I even saw a meme about this earlier today. They're like, how come Atreyu didn't sink into the swamp with Artax? The Orin. The Orin is the only reason that Atreyu is able to cross the swamp of sadness, even after this horrible thing, because it doesn't explain this in the movie, but in the book, he isn't touched by the swamp of sadness the entire time. I mean, he gets sad because his horse dies, but the important bit here is as they're going through the swamp, our track keeps sinking more and more into the swamp, and Atreyu, it doesn't affect Atreyu. And he keeps trying to talk Atreyu into stopping. He's saying stuff like, we're chasing after something you only dreamed about. We won't find anything. Maybe it's too late even now. Maybe the childlike empress is already dead and everything we're doing is useless. Let's turn back, Master. And this shocks Atreyu because the Artax is usually very brave. And he's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it's the swamp. And it's no matter how much Atreyu tries, I mean, we all know this part. Right? We all know this part. We've all got that early trauma from Artax sinking into the swamp. And Atreyu, the only thing holding him out of the swamp is the Orin. And that's why tonight's episode is titled The Power of Will, because that's part of what the Orin is. But we're going to get to that, right? I usually paraphrase the story, and then after I'm done paraphrasing the story, we talk about all the stuff. So we're going to get through the paraphrase first, and then I'll come back to that. Try to keep myself on track here. Okay. Atreyu tries to take the necklace off and put it on Artax because that's how much he loves the horse. He's like, well, maybe it'll save you. And Artax is like, you can't. It won't. He doesn't say it won't work, but he doesn't have the right to because childlike empress gave it to him, not Artax. Now, this is an important bit right here. We're going to bookmark that. That is another little important bit there. But again, I want to keep myself on track. We're going to come back to that. That part was really rough for me as a kid. I think it was rough for all of us, right? And then he goes wading through the swamp more and more until he finally sees the mountain of shell, and he climbs up on top of it. And then he hears a voice from inside the mountain saying, for goodness sake, sir, let's get the words right for that. Let's see. Sakes alive, old woman, someone's crawling around on us. And then he slips off the shell and into the mud, and a big head comes out of the side of the mountain. And that's Marla, the aged one. And she doesn't sneeze. She's not allergic to him like in the movie. But she still doesn't like him being there. She wants to be left alone. And just like in the book, she don't care. She's like, I've been alive so long, nothing matters. Go away and leave me in peace. The wheezing, gurgling voice spoke again. What are you doing here, son? Atreyu reached for the amulet on his chest and held it in such a way that the great eyes couldn't help seeing it. I found out, by the way, that I actually could have just got away with reading the whole thing, so I'm going to go ahead and read this part out. We can totally get away with this. Do you recognize this, Morla? She took a while to answer. Because he holds out the Orin to her. She took a while to answer. Sakes alive, Orin, we haven't seen that in a long time. Have we, old woman? The emblem of the childlike empress. Not in a long time. The childlike empress is sick, said Atreyu. Did you know that? It's all the same to us, isn't it? The old woman, said Morla. Or Morla replied. She seemed to be talking to herself. Perhaps she had no one else to talk to, for heaven knows how long. But also, to me, I want to put up a little bit of a defense to talking to oneself. This is wisdom. This is where we find the answers to the higher self, is by speaking to the self. You want to know what you think? You want to understand yourself and get to understand your inner workings? Have a conversation with yourself. Sit down and talk to you. This is the best way to truly get to know yourself. Ask yourself questions and answer them. This is a way to understand not only the material self, but also a way to begin accessing the full or higher self. So, it's a bit outside of the story, I suppose, but talking to oneself is very important. It is a very useful in processing, very useful in understanding, and, of anything, but also very useful in understanding the self. If you struggle with this, feel silly, go look in a mirror and talk to yourself in the mirror, and that makes it a little bit easier at first. Yes, it does make people stare. Quite a few times, because I talk to myself constantly. Like, if I couldn't talk to myself, I wouldn't be able to function as well as I do. I need to do that. So there have been times like when I was living a lifestyle where I was on the bus a lot, I actually would get the little Bluetooth ear thing, right? And keep that on me, so when people hear me talking, they think I'm talking to somebody else. And they don't look at me weird and move away. They just think I'm talking on my Bluetooth to somebody. Great life hack. If you talk to yourself, get a Bluetooth, even if it's one that don't work. Just get a fake one, stick it in your ear. Suddenly, nobody thinks anything about you talking to yourself. Even if you say your name, which I sometimes will say my name when I'm talking to myself, like, damn it, Art. I think it's incredibly healthy. It is a good way to process. If you start getting in like actual arguments with yourself, you might want to consider a little bit of you need to talk to yourself even more and understand, right? In my opinion. Howdy, Dr. Zero Free Magic Secrets Show. Yeah, I got your name right, it looks like. Okay, so he talks to Morla. And I said I was going to read this conversation out now that I know it's possible. If we don't save her, she'll die, Atreyu cried out. The nothing is spreading everywhere. I've seen it myself. Morla stared at him out of her great empty eyes. We don't mind, do we, old woman? But then we shall all die, Atreyu screamed. Every last one of us. Sakes alive, said Morla. But what do we care? Nothing matters to us anymore. It's all the same to us. But you'll be destroyed too, Morla, cried Atreyu angrily. Or do you expect you're so old to outlive Fantasia? Sakes alive, Morla gurgled. We're old, son. Much too old. Lived long enough, seen too much. When you know as much as we do, nothing matters. Things just repeat. Day and night, summer and winter. The world is empty and aimless. Everything circles around. Whatever starts up must pass away. Whatever is born must die. It all cancels out. Good and bad, beautiful and ugly. Everything's empty. Nothing is real. Nothing matters. Atreyu didn't know what to answer. The aged one's dark, empty, pond sized eyes paralyzed its thoughts. After a while, he heard her speak again. You're young, son. If you were as old as we are, you'd know there's nothing but sadness. Why shouldn't we die, you and I, childlike empress, the whole lot of us? Anyway, it's all flim flam, meaningless games. Nothing matters. Leave us in peace, son. Go away. Atreyu tensed his will to fight off the paralysis that flowed from her eyes. If you know so much, he said, you must know what the childlike empress illness is and whether there's a cure for it. We do. Don't we, old woman? More Louise, but it's all the same to us whether she's saved or not. So why should we tell you? If it's really all the same to you, Atreyu argued, you might as well tell me. We could, we could. Couldn't we, old woman? Morla grunted, but we don't feel like it. Then it's not all the same to you. Then you yourself don't believe what you're saying. After a long silence, he heard a deep gurgling and belching. That must have been some kind of laughter. If Morley the aged one was still capable of laughing, in any case, she said, you're a sly one, son, really sly. We haven't had so much fun in a long time, have we, old woman? Sakes alive, it's true. We might just as well tell you. Makes no difference. Should we tell him, old woman? A long silence followed. Atreyu waited anxiously for Morla's answer, taking care not to interrupt the slow, cheerless flow of her thoughts. At last she spoke. Your life is short, son. Ours is long, much too long. But we live in time. You a short time, we a long time. The childlike empress has always been there, but she's not old. She has always been young. She still is. Her life isn't measured by time, but by names. She needs a new name. She keeps needing new names. Do you know her name, son? No, Atreyu admitted. I never heard it. You couldn't have, said Morla. Not even we can remember it. Yet she has had many names, but they are all forgotten, over and done with. But without a name, she can't live. All the childlike empress needs is a new name. Then she'll get well, but it makes no difference whether she gets well or not. She closed her pond-sized eyes and began slowly to pull her head in. Wait, cried Atreyu. Where can she get a name? Who can give her one? Where can I find the name? None of us, Morley gurgled. No inhabitant of Thasica can give her a new name, so it's hopeless. Sakes alive, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Who then? Cried Atreyu in despair. Who can give her the name that will save us all? Don't make so much noise, said Morla. Leave us in peace and go away. Even we don't know who can give her a name. Okay, so then that continues from there, and she advises him essentially to go to the Southern Oracle. Ever heard of a soliloquy? Indeed. At this point, if someone asks me if I'm talking to myself, I have a tendency to tell them not to interrupt an important conversation. I am not embarrassed about talking to myself at all, honestly. Like I said, I did wear the earphone thing there. That was mostly because, I don't want to upset people. That being said, like, I used to have a job as a picker at a warehouse. Like, they would like you get a list of stuff and you got to go find each the coordinates on the shelves for each thing, put them in a cart, take them back, put them in a box, wrap them up, send them out. Charles Manson's behavior analysis today and reminded you of me. Okay. I actually have a very personal grudge against Charles Manson. Not like I've ever met the guy, obviously. It's possible that I did in a past life. Like, considering where he was and what I was up to at the time, yeah, probably. But I might have done something about it because just seeing that dude angers me. He he is part of how the 60s movement, the whole new age hippie concept got destroyed. Charles Manson, if he hadn't done what he had done when he did it, the world would be different than it is today. The world would be a more beautiful place. This is how the whole movement got stopped, is because Charles Manson did what he did, and everybody started conflating hippies with this murder and violence. And to a lot of people, um, Charles Manson confirmed the idea of marijuana reefer madness. This is how people still was able to be convinced that smoking marijuana makes you violent. Yeah. Let me get to that Black Griffin, but I want to mention it. EA Coed. Yes. I have him. It's more personal. Like, I never actually spoke directly with AE Coed, but I was involved with Bal. Well, Bal tried to get me involved with them, and I didn't like what I heard. I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like anything going on there. These people, some of them may have some understanding of magic, but there are people that are using that magic, especially that bit about signing a pact, co-signing a pact with the demon, getting a pact with the demon set up through that. What they're doing is the same kind of crap my great grandfather used to do, where you're not actually working for your client. They allow you in. Your client allows you in by paying you to do work for them. That gives them their openness, their will, and then they use that to instead enthrall and spell the person to make them give them more money, to get the connection in, to keep the client coming back, rather than actually doing the work that they were asked to do. This is this is still common. So, Marilyn Manson, or Charles Manson. Charles Manson was a victor of MK Ultra. There's actually a lot of evidence there that he was the sickness that was in Charles Manson was helped along or placed there by the CIA. This whole thing that I just discussed, and yeah, I'm kind of mad at Charles Manson about it, but it was part of the intentional corruption and corrupting of the entire movement, right? There's all kinds of stuff that was going on, especially while Nixon was president, where they were purposely affecting all the different movements, the civil rights movements, the hippie movements, all that stuff. They felt that they had a right to do anything they needed to into this country for any circumstances because they were fighting communism. They were making sure the rich stayed rich and the poor stayed poor. And this isn't just me being crazy. These are things that are known. These are facts. This is the same CIA that was willing to stage a terrorist attack in Florida as an excuse to attack Cuba. And when JFK refused to do that, well, he wound up not president very much longer, didn't he? Yes. The other players pulling the strings and the people incarnated into human bodies here. Yes, there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, and maybe not so much incarnated, but there are definitely thought forms out there that have a vested interest in our suffering, in our staying down, and they affect and influence people in power. That is why we had to remove Yihad. That is why this. That is why the audience, and specifically the horde, did what they did, because there was a being that was at the center. Well, there's a spot in each reality where there is a massive amount of influence, and he had gotten there and was controlling that from there, all the different thought forms that were leading us to hierarchy and this desire to place ourselves against nature and make ourselves think we were separate, and trying to divide the world into categories and put it all into boxes, right? This is why, before I truly understood what it was that was going on, I called that being the God of Order. And that's not really how it works. Is an eggshell God, a fledgling being that thought he could create this world into eventually his pocket reality by taking over that point and eventually getting us all sublimated into him. At least this part of our perception. Keep this part of our higher self's attention on him and belief that he is powerful. And anyways, there's a whole lot more to that. But we okay. That's this is well, to be clear, it was never like Harry Potter, right? Um, I'm just gonna leave my opinion of Harry Potter out of this, except for that I wasn't that surprised when she turned out to be a transphobe and stuff. Because I mean, there are literally people in their thing called they call mudbloods. There's the whole anti-Semitic trope with the elves and Voldemort, whose name was not bespoke. Anyways, I'm not going to get into Harry Potter. I don't want to upset anyone that's a fan. Okay, the reason the world is as unbalanced as it is part of what we're talking about in Fantasia here, the loss of fantasy, the loss of romance, the need by the few to break everything beautiful so that it can be owned. And in that process, they take away joy, they take away beauty, they take away the romance of the world. And these things, as they are stripped away, they take away the magic. They take away, and when the less hope we have, the more broken we become as a whole, the less miracles are possible. Right? I mean, and it's a turning away in order to keep us from having the full reality, because balance, the reality is in balance. We have magic. But all those things that's stripping away all that stuff, the point of it is to get us focused on a particular point on the material plane, or excuse me, the mental plane that we think is the material plane. This idea that, oh, this is all there is. This is practicality. This is the common sense, mundane world, and nothing else exists but that. It's locking us into a false paradigm, which then pulls that balance out, but allows them to essentially siphon off everything that should have been and into their larger being, which they then are using or were using as a tool to affect other areas of the multiverse, right? Essentially, they were trying to use this reality as a mana battery for their power elsewhere. Well, I say meow back. And yeah, that is what's happened. The world is unbalanced. We are too heavily focused on a part of the mental plane that we think is the material plane, and it locks us in a box. But we're coming back from that. The Yihad, the being that was doing that, has been removed. Yes, extracting potential and using it elsewhere. At some point, I'm going to talk about that on the channel because I actually had experience with that recently about connecting with one of my own multi-dimensional cells. I have a couple things, and there are a few things I've done. The potential for our magic, yes. The extra focus, all that is left when you put yourself in a box. There are little edges left that you leave behind, and they can use that and use the fact that what's going on here to essentially power themselves in another reality where they're trying to do the same thing, trying to create hierarchy there as well. It's kind of a pyramid scheme, you know? Yeah, pyramid scheme. I'm getting a little outside of my depth as to what I'm able to understand there. Like, I'm only capable of a simple understanding of it while I'm inside this brain. But that's the basic explanation as to how it works. And we combat that, we fix that by giving the Empress a name, by returning to fantasy, by accepting the beauty in the world and not ignoring how incredible reality is, even in this current moment where so many things are broken. So many things are broken, but there are things that need healing. There are things we can grow. There is hope and beauty still left in this world. And we can fix reality by finding the joy, finding the hope, finding the camaraderie and cooperation that comes with understanding the context that we are all special. We are all the center of reality. And each one of us is a sovereign being. Okay, so he talks to Morla, and Bastion picks up right immediately. Like Morla told him, someone from outside of Fantasia must give the name, because for the same reason that no one who is Fantasian, I guess that'd be the word, is can use the powers of the aura other than wearing it as a symbol, right? Remember we talked about how Atreyu was told he cannot use the powers of the Orin, is simply to wear it and bear it as a symbol that he is a messenger for the childlike empress. And that is because he is Fantasian. He is part of the fantasy. He is not, no, I guess you could say he's a tulpa, right? This, all of Fantasia is a representation of the inner world, kind of a representation of the cosmic consciousness, the collective consciousness, right? He is everyone's fantasies given life. And that everyone's fantasies given life is the part that Bastion isn't going to understand later, but we'll get to that. How we can all be the center of the universe is that there actually isn't any center, right? It is infinite. It is everywhere, always, all places, at once, everything, everywhere, always, at once. And it's all one thing. It's all one point, but it's also ever expanding, but also already infinite and covers all things that are. So, within that, there are points of awareness. And each one of those points of awareness is, at least from your that perspective, the center. So we are all the center because we are points of awareness. We are the center from our perspective, right? But all perspectives are perceiving the same thing, and it is all interconnected. And it is that interconnectedness that makes each one of us the center of the universe. Okay. And she tells him she can't get there. There's no way he can get there in time, Morla, because he tells him to spot the Southern Oracle and where it is, and that they could answer his question as to find how to find someone that is outside of Fantasia. And then she tells him to go away, and that if he wasn't bearing the Orin, she would have eaten him to shut him up. But he was, and so despite the fact that she doesn't care one way or the other, she still respects the Orin, as well as any of the monsters that he comes across. Okay, so after that, he wanders through the swamp. He's starving. He can't find any roots. Can't find anything. He lost all his provisions when our track sank. He has no more dried buffalo meat and grass seed cakes. Wheat is just a grass seed, by the way. So I thought that was funny. The grass seed cakes. Well, I'm taking a long time with paraphrasing tonight. Okay. Is this we are all one consciousness thing true? Yes and no. There is a collective perception. You have to understand that everything has facets. Everything has different ways of looking at it, which have their own truth and have their own reality in them. This is part of what makes metaphors real. This is part of what makes metaphors powerful. But there is a collection of perspectives, the collective consciousness that is, in a way, its own thing. And this is the closest we can actually come to the concept of God, in my opinion, is that collection of all things. But God is dreaming, and it is not a lucid dream. Yes, like the emoji. So, yes, it is true, but it is also not, because that collection of all things, right? The Horde has essentially a name for this. It is whose face has too many names, whose name has too many faces. And at times it seems to have a will, slightly, but it is not self aware. It is not conscious. It is a thing that has a vague sense of humor and poetry, but it is its will and its drift drift of, I guess you could call it, intention, comes from its collection of us. Yeah, it's a matter of different facets. It's a matter of different facets. Um, if I was to go from a purely animistic understanding in the way that I was told these things, there would be a spirit of human. Just like when I talked about communing with the spirit, with the animal spirits. There's individual wolf spirits, and then there's the spirit of wolf, and there would be a spirit of human, but that is a collection of all of us that works as a metaphor, and it's not something we would be able to call upon. It is something that we will never be able to interact with because we are part of it. Now, if you were a and if you were in this moment in the incarnation of a wolf who who worked with spirit, you could call upon the spirit of human, and it would have some effect on your interaction with humans. But I don't know how much I trust how much I mean it must be so, honestly. But it's one of the ones I have a little bit of trouble accepting. Like there is definitely a spirit of wolf. There's definitely a spirit of all kinds of different stuff. So it is there. It they are there. The spirit of human, but it's probably fractured with how much we are so unlike each other. So will without self awareness. I guess, like I said, it has a drift of intent, that collected thing, but again, there's this spirit of human, but that what we experience as that, as far as for human itself, that is that's the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness is would essentially be that being subconscious. Yes, this world is a type of kind of deception pulled over our eyes, and that deception pulled over our eyes is that improper focus. Right? In some way, all reality is a deception pulled over our eyes. It is something we are choosing to believe, something we are choosing to perceive, because we need to perceive something. Nothing is an impossibility. And I'm not saying that it is impossible, that there is nothing that it is impossible to do. I'm saying literally that nothing is impossible. It can't be. So there has to be something. There has to be something to perceive, and that's where we get all these different this plethora of dimensions and perceptions and realities. But um, this particular one is an illusion more so than others because we are our focus is directed to a part of the mental plane that we are being deceived as being the material plane. We are currently being deceived, and that deception is what creates the gap that keeps us from remembering who we are. Right, the deeper that gap is, the less connection we have to our fuller self, the less memory we have from life to life. We aren't able to keep track of ourselves and what we've been up to for the last 3,000 years. We don't know. I barely know what I've been up to for the last 3,000 years, and this is with constant work on those things. The percentage varies from time and location, and I have no idea how to put a percentage to that. I wouldn't even know how to measure. But we are essentially veiled from our fullest selves. But that veil is thinning. As much as it seems like the world is totally off kilter right now, we are actually going back the other way. We are set up to return to balance. We need to let the beasts of the old world thrash their death throes. And that's where we are right now. God is dead. Their God is dead. Yehud has been removed, whatever you want to call that. And we're watching the beasts, the churches, the institutions that he created respawn and thrash their death throes until, it wrecks as much as it's going to wreck and we can rebuild from the ashes. In some ways, that sounds horrific, but it's filled with hope. Just got to hang in there for a lifetime or two. And even this one, I mean, the more hope we can do, the more beauty we can create, the better the next one's going to be, right? Like, that's part of the reason I'm choosing to become a wraith after this, is so that I can do more work to ensure that things go the right way, that we keep going towards balance. And if I'm able to, the other thing is just straight up belief in magic. So I intend to be able to, at that point, prove it, right? Oh, we definitely have the ability to make other realms in our mind. I heard the Milky Way is collapsing, or like a black hole will eat everything. Well, it turns out we may be a black hole inside of a black hole inside of a black hole. I added that last one. But there's been some interesting discussions on that. And I think, where are the words? I think I understand something about that after I've thought about it for a while. But we're all falling. We already knew that everything is falling, just at the same speed, right? Yes, this timeline has been messed with a lot, but yeah, we were in almost a hostage situation here. That's the best way I could put it. We were in a hostage situation, but the one keeping all of this portion of our perception hostage has been removed by the enforcement arm of the audience, the horde. I don't know whether they're to call them the mercenary arm, the police force. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. The part of the audience that takes care of problems so that we can properly see an area has begun their work, right? And timelines being messed with, that's nothing new. That happens in every reality. That is a constant thing. That's part of how magic works. Magic is supposed to be. But in some ways, this makes for an interesting concept because we have experiences now that we wouldn't have experienced had that not happened. Not all of them were the best of experiences, but information, learning has been acquired. Okay, so Atreyu gets out of the swamp finally. I think he gets some food, something to eat. But yeah, he's told that about the whole name thing, and Bastion already kind of catches on that he could be the one to give the name. Oh, there's the yelling. when he yells and everyone hears it. Let's see, when does that happen? Happens somewhere in here. Yes, that's part of how gravity works. And there's something important about that in the black holes. Like, I don't know. I don't have it yet. I don't have it yet, but I can feel it. There's something important there. Something important. Some coincidence, some correlation between gravity and black holes that we're not quite seeing yet. And I'm like, science isn't quite seeing yet that I'm aware of. Now, I'm no quantum physicist, but there's an importance there that hopefully I can speak to someone about, like Rax or somebody, and we can, and maybe I'll have more to say on that at some point if I can understand it. Okay, so let's see. Let's jump to like page 58 or so. Oh yes, the Mork finally. Okay, so yeah, he gets out of the I gets out of the swamp. Like, and we begin Ygramul the many. Dire hunger and thirst of trade pursued a trade. It was 2 days since he had left the swamps of sadness, and since then he had been wandering through an empty, rocky wilderness. What little provisions he had taken with him had sunk beneath the black waters with Artax. In vain, Atreyu dug his fingers into the clefts between stones in the hopes of finding some little root, but nothing grew there, not even moss or lichen. So he is in the let's see what's it called. He is the land of the dead mountains, and they have a saying from his people. He remembered an old song. Better the huntsman should perish in the swamps, for in the dead mountains there is a deep, deep chasm, where dwelleth Ygramul the many, the horror of horrors. And it says, but he was engaged in the great quest. Oh, now let's not. So apparently school gets out at 1 o'clock in Bastion's world because the belfry struck one and school is over for the day. Bastion considers giving it all up and going home. And then he decides Atreyu wouldn't give up and he has to keep going. And Atreyu had just thought about how if he would like to give up, but because he is um, engaged in the great quest for the life of the child, look like Empress and Olive Fantasia is at stake. He had no right to give up. That would be a massive cleansing ritual, Necrophilus. Yes, the wasp shapeshifter. Ygramul is actually pretty cool. Like, what a creature. Felix brushes my hair a lot of nights and does what they call giving me fuss, which is going basically like grooming me like a monkey. And I just love it. And this to me makes me feel I don't know if cleanse is the right word, but it entrances me and really makes me feel my body and that physical cohesion. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So they have lunch, and they do a little bit of stuff, and they go home and take their nap. Lunch is the larger meal of the day. Yeah, I heard that. That makes sense. Sorry, I was over on this part here. I didn't quite see your chat for your comments for a second there. Okay, so he strikes one. Atreus, and they both think about giving it up. A time came when Atreus really could not go forward. Before him lay the deep chasm. Okay, so they mentioned the Gemork at the end of the last chapter. That's a let's see, what did they say? The end of the Morla chapter. At the same time, the shadow of being, which I condensed out of the darkness of the heath, picked up Atreus' trail and headed for the swamps of sadness. Nothing and no one in all of Fantastica would deflect it from that trail. And then it mentions it again here in a bit. There's Bastion freaking out. Well, anyways, back to the chasm. A time came when Atreus really could not go forward. Before him lay the deep chasm. The grandiose horror of the sight cannot be described in words. A yawning cleft, perhaps a mile wide, twined its way through the land of the dead. Mountains. How deep it might be, there was no way of knowing. So he has to skirt the chasm. I believe it's somewhere in here. Okay, yeah, it's while he's fighting Ygramul. Well, he doesn't fight Ygramul, to be clear. He, because he can't. Like, nothing will fight him while he has. North America is very much still stuck in the puritanical way of thinking, and working, in that we believe that we have to work to justify our lives, and that we have to like prove our worth by how much we can provide for the machine, which puts us as cogs in a wheel. It's one of the things that very much benefit the people at the top, and that's why America loves it, and it's stuck that way. Okay. Wow, we're an hour in, and I'm still doing the paraphrasing. I'm usually done with this by now. Okay, so he finds the chasm, skirts around it, and then eventually sees a big spider web with a dragon in the middle. A luck dragon. We all know who that is, right? And he sees a giant, vague looking spider coming down and biting him, or biting Falcor over and over again. And he gets the Orin and goes climbing onto the net because he knows that the spider can help him, but he wants to save this luck dragon that is in a giant spider web. And when he gets close, he sees that the spider is made up of wasps. It is made up of a bunch of little buzzing creatures that are actually stinging Falcor. And it doesn't just stay a spider. It turns into a scorpion at one point. It turns into all kinds of different shapes. And Atreyu tries to climb out onto the web to confront Ygramul. And when it turns to look at him, Bastion screams. We are talking about the hi Gavin. We are talking about the Never Ending Story, the book version. We've been doing a book club. I'm not sure if you've been here for the book club. Oh, I forgot to put the link. That reminds me. supposed to put that link every time so that people can catch up if they haven't been reading the book. It's one of the featured posts in CMU. And it has a PDF for a copy of The Never-Ending Story, which, as we've been discussing in the which we've been discussing in this book series, is actually intended as an initiation process. And today we're talking about Morla, the Aged One, the part where Artax gets drowned, and Ygramul. It is an incredible movie. The book is a thousand times better, and there is a. I mean, the movie's great, but the book, there's an initiation process going on with the never-ending story, and that's what we're discussing. We are now at a part that doesn't happen in the book. In the book, Falkor, I forget how they meet. I think just by luck. It's been forever since I've seen the damn movie. They are quite the character, aren't they? So, Ygramul confronts Bastion, and they both confronts Atreyu, sees Atreyu, and Bastion screams, and everybody hears it in the book. Let's see. And that mentions the Gmork again, and I want to read the description of the Gmork because I'm fascinated with the Gmork. If he had known that a pursuer was close behind him and coming closer by the hour, he might have hurried and taken dangerous risks. It was that creature of darkness which had been after him since the start of his journey. Since then, its body had taken on recognizable outline. It was a pitch-black wolf, the size of an ox. Nose to the ground, it crowded along, following Atreyu's trail through the stony desert of the Dead Mountains. Its tongue hung far out of its mouth, and its terrifying fangs were bared. The freshness of the scent told the wolf that its prey was only a few miles ahead. But suspecting nothing of his pursuer, Atreyu picked his way along cautiously. And so that's just before he sees the luck dragon in the web and climbs out onto it to confront Ygramul. Luck dragons are creatures of air, warmth, and pure joy. Despite their great size, they are light as summer cloud and consequently need no wings for flying. They swim in the air of heaven as fish swim in water. Seen from the earth, they look like slow lightning flashes. The most amazing thing about them is their song. Their voice sounds like the golden note of a large bell, and when they speak softly, the bell seems to be ringing in the distance. There's a lot about hope in Falkor as well. Yes, Ygramul is an absolutely terrifying being. How would you fight something like that? Even if you manage to hit a couple of the wasps, it's just going to make no difference. No? It talks about how when the luck dragon is fighting the fighting Ygramul, like he bites on, and it just the part that he chopped off just flies back over and reconnects, and just one sting is all it takes for them to die. This was Ygramul, and now Atreyu knew why she was called the Many. He sprang from his hiding place, reached for the gem, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop in the name of the childlike empress, stop!" But the hissing and roaring of the combatants drowned out his voice. He himself could barely hear it. Without stopping to think, he set foot on the sticky ropes of the web, which swayed beneath him as he ran. He lost his balance, fell, clung by his hands to keep from falling into the dark chasm, pulled himself up again, caught himself in the ropes, fought free, and hurried on. At last, Igmaro sensed that something was coming towards her. With the speed of lightning, she turned about, confronting Atreyu with an enormous, still blue face. Her single eye had a vertical pupil, which stared at Atreyu with inconceivable malignancy. A cry of fear escaped Bastion. A cry of terror passed through the ravine and echoed from side to side. Igmaro turned her eye to the left and right to see if someone else had arrived, for that sound could not have been made by the boy who stood there, as though paralyzed with horror. Could you have heard my cries? Bastion wondered in alarm. But that's not possible. And I love that they use the word two legs. A two legs, Atreyu heard. Years upon years of hunger, and now two tasty morsels at once. A lucky day for Ygramul. Atreyu needed all his strength to keep his composure. He held out the gem to the monster's eyes and asked, Do you know this emblem? Come closer, two legs, buzzed the many voices. Okay, I'm not gonna read the whole thing at you, but yeah, I think you mentioned something about that once before, Gavin. That you actually have somewhere where they have the luck dragon that's near you. That's near you. I thought it was cool that we talked about Ygramul the Many just after Legion was brought up in the last live. I didn't do that intentionally. It just kind of lined up that way. It's been a very popular short, by the way. The short that was made off of that. It's done quite well. I don't mind if you read that whole scene. It is a good scene. So, you know what? I was having fun. Come closer, two legs, buzzed the many voices. Igmaril doesn't see well. Atreyu took one step closer to the face, the mouth open, showing innumerable glittering feelers, hooks, and claws in place of a tongue. Still closer, the swarm buzzed. He took one more step, which brought him near enough to distinguish the innumerable still blue insects which whirled about in seeming confusion. Yet the face as a whole remained motionless. I am Atreyu, he said. I have come on a mission from the childlike empress. Most inopportune, said the angry buzzing after a time. What do you want of Igmaril? As you can see, she is very busy. I want this luck dragon, said Atreyu. Let me have him. What do you want him for, Atreyu? Two legs? I lost my horse in the swamp of sadness. I must go to the southern oracle, because only Uyala, I still don't know how to pronounce that, can tell me who can give the childlike empress a new name. If she doesn't get one, she will die, and all Fantastica with her. You too, Igmaro. Ah, the face drawled. It is the reason for all the places where there is nothing. Yes, said Atreyu. So you too know of them. But the southern oracle is too long a journey for a lifetime. That's why I'm asking you for this luck dragon. If he carries me through the air, I may get there before it's too late. Out of the whirling swarm that made up the face came a sound, suggesting the giggling of many voices. You're all wrong, Atreyu Two Legs. We know nothing of the southern oracle and nothing of Uyala. But we do know that this dragon cannot carry you. And even if he were in the best of health, the trip would take so long that the childlike empress would die of her illness in the meantime. You must measure your quest, Atreyu, in terms not of your own life, but of hers. The gaze of the eye, the vertical pupil, was almost unbearable. That's true, he said in a small voice. Besides, the motionless face went on, the luck dragon has Ymiriel's poison in his body. He has less than an hour to live. There's no hope, Atreyu murmured. Not for him, not for me, and not for you either, Igmaril. Oh, well, the voice buzzed. Igmaril would at least have had one good meal. But who says it's Igmaril's last meal? She knows the way of getting you to the southern oracle in a twinkling. But the question is, will you like it? What is that way? That is Igmaril's secret. The creature of darkness have their secrets too. Atreyu Two Legs. Igmaril has never revealed hers. And you too must swear you'll never tell a soul, for it would be greatly to Igmaril's disadvantage if it were known. Yes, greatly to her disadvantage. I swear, speak. The great still blue face leaned forward just a little and buzzed almost inaudibly. You must let Igmaril bite you. Atreyu shrank back in horror. Ygramul is poisoned, the voice went on. Kills within an hour. The one who has it inside of him, it gives the power to wish himself into any parts of Fantastica he chooses. I imagine if this were known, Ygramul's victims would escape her. Okay. So he lets Atreyu bite them. Yeah. That is certainly part of it. Really, the thing that sets humans apart, is this thing here, in my opinion. The fact that we can pick up things and manipulate our environment and create tools to a greater degree than just about any other species. That is our great secret. But we're far from the only species that uses magic. It's time for my intermission. Back in just a moment. Okay, I return. Okay. So I think I'm gonna leave off with, yeah, it is a great chapter. Like I said, like I said, Ygramul is quite the intimidating creature. So they have a whole discussion here. They debate how it's going to happen, and eventually he lets Ygramul bite him. And he wishes himself to the Southern Oracle. And then, because my favorite character, besides Atreyu, when the wolf reached the spot a short time later, he saw the giant spider web, but there was no one in sight. The trail he had been following broke off, and try as he might, he could not find it again. But that's not it for the Gomorrah. That is not it for the Gomorrah. We will get back to the Gomorrah eventually. Bastion stops reading, and we go to the next chapter, and I had a hard time stopping. I really wanted to keep going because I really enjoy this book, and I feel like it's getting good. This is a lot of fun. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to say about doing this, trying to define this book as an initiation sequence, is that it's a little more subtle than I remembered, but I'm starting to grasp it, right? It's one of those things that I'm realizing the more you try to put your finger on it directly, the harder it is to actually define. And that's where I wanted to start talking about tonight and the power of will. Because there's, how do I phrase this? Okay, we're going to get back to that power of the power of will part, because there's something important there that needs to percolate, even for me for a bit. I thought I could say it right off the bat. I thought I had it. I've been thinking about it earlier, but then it backed away. Just like I was talking about, when you try to define something clearly, sometimes that makes it farther away, right? Makes me think of the line in the Neil Young poem. It's about love, but it's true for other things. Love is a rose, love is a rose, but you better not pick it. It only grows upon the vine. Handful of thorns, and you know you've missed it. You lost your love when you used the word mine. That idea in the poem there is what I'm talking about. Sometimes some things, when you try to grip them, when you try to hold them, is how you lose them. Close your hand in thin air, just hanging there. Oh, I tried to quote myself and couldn't. There's a poem I wrote about this. When you try to touch the present, is it really what it seems? When you try to grasp it, hold thin air, just hanging there. Anyways, I can't remember right now, but it's either way. There's there's also another aspect to that with magic itself. And I know I often talk about refining and defining what it is you want with your intent. But the opposite of this is also true. There's always paradox, there's always balance, conflict in everything, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We say it on the material plane. But for every concept, there's an equal and opposite concept. There is always that interaction going on with everything. There is inertia, there's also friction, right? Okay, so now that I've kind of prepped your mind with those concepts, that's also what the book is doing, is by prepping your mind with concepts, keeping certain symbols within the collective consciousness in the periphery, in the background, putting them there without talking about them. Like the chasm. This is a idea that is in many of our mythologies and the mythos of many different cultures. There's that separation, the chasm, the abyss that we must cross before achieving understanding. And there he is at it when he's facing Yggdrasil, when he is also found his luck dragon, his new ride, his thing that is replacing our tracks. It is no coincidence that both are white, right? And that he is riding them. And white is a symbolism here for not just one thing connecting to the other, but white is often seen as purity. It is seen as raw essence of power and light and goodness. I don't typically see things that way. And he does in this series make a big point of saying the childlike empress does not judge. Even Yggdrasil brings it up when he's like, because so Atreyu, even after Yggdrasil offers Yggdrasil, like Ygramul tells Atreyu how he can get to the Southern Oracle. He tries to ask for Falkor to be freed as well, and he's like, and Ygramul's like, you can't ask that of me because the childlike empress does not judge and sees all things the same. She would not see what I'm doing is wrong. I have to eat. I'm going to eat the luck dragon. She accept that the childlike empress would not interfere. So they're using that metaphor of white with goodness, but at the same time reminding us of that balance. So I thought that was cool. But anyways, we're skipping ahead. We still haven't talked about, let's back up to the Orin. I've talked before about how the Orin is the connection of the material self with the higher self. It is the flow in between. It makes me think of the aura, the energy that is created by the soul body interaction, right? It is that intertwining of forces. And this is what Atreyu has that he cannot give away. While it is on him, he cannot give it away, right? Because he is the one on the mission. Now, eventually, yes, he is going to give it to Bastion, but not until his own mission is completed. And I don't have much of a spoiler alert at this point, right? But at the moment, while he is on this quest, he has been given that power of connection with the fuller self, of understanding the interaction, or not of understanding, because I mean, of symbolically, he has been given that connection to the material and self and the fuller self combining. And he is going up the mountain, right? He's stopped chopping wood and carrying water and gone on the path up the mountain. And the first thing that he faces when he truly goes on this journey is he is shown the nothing and what it is. He has been shown that the existential horror, the existential crisis, the loss of joy, the loss of romance, the loss of fantasy is there. And he is told that if it touches you, it can destroy you. Now, I want to point out that this is different in the swamp of sadness. The swamp of sadness can take your hope. But the existential crisis, the lack of meaning, that's why I called it, when I was having my existential crisis, the big red empty, is because it is not sadness. When I was feeling the big red empty, I would have rejoiced to feel sadness, right? Because it's something. There is beauty even in suffering. There is something less than that in the existential crisis. So he is shown that, and it's told that if it touches you, if it gets into you, if it gets on you, then it will take you away. And then he goes into the swamp and faces sadness. Sadness, though it will weigh you down, though it can take your vehicle, it can take your way to go forward mightily, your chariot, if you're speaking in the realm of the tarot cards. That's what I've been referring to Artrax as, is the chariot tarot card and Atreyu as the fool, right? It can bog the wheels of it down. It can bring your horse down into the mud and even take it from you. But if we keep that interaction, if we keep that knowledge, that connection, sadness cannot stop us. It is the power of the will, right? The power of the will can carry us through this when we have, and not like, oh, I will myself not to be sad. I'm not saying no bogus thing like that. What I'm saying is having that goal, knowing that mission, knowing there is something that you are going to helps with sadness, right? But also simply having the will of over the self. When the when the astral and the material self are aligned, sadness is almost an outside thing when it gets down to that. It is something that we feel and experience, but it's something that we can. hmm, What's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know. I don't know the word, but we can keep it from our core. I don't know. I feel like this is where one of the areas where I'm speaking from the privileged position of my particular neurodivergence that won't let me stay sad, right? But there is something here. There's um you know, when you have that connection, you can make it through the sadness, no matter how deep it gets. Even when all hope is gone, you still continue, right? Because that's part of what our tax is hope. Atreyu has gotten so sad that hope has befallen him, has lost him. He has lost all hope, but still he moves. I am broken, battered, and bruised. My spine is shattered, but still I move. There, I gotta quote myself somewhere. Anyways, so yeah, okay. I said what I can say about the swamp. That was a hard bit for all of us. Any of us have seen that movie the first time as a kid. Oh, I cried and cried and cried. Okay. Then Marla, the aged one. We did a little bit of a scene there. For me, it's extremely significant with the turtle because that's a Manitou. That's mystery, turtle, the world. You know, and Marla is all the pessimism. You know? Yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions as a child, that movie. Holy crap. So but Marla is pessimism. Marla, I don't know how much true wisdom there is in the way Marla sees the world. Though I feel like him using a turtle and saying, "Oh, when you've seen as many things as I have seen, and the pattern is repeated," it's and like I said, to me, the turtles. I see all these things in the turtle, but I don't think that's where Michael Ende was trying to get there. I Yeah, the horse scene is rough, right? And I think Michael Ende is more talking about the pulling inside of the turtle. He's seeing the turtle more as like isolation, as drawing within. And this is another thing that Atreyu has to defeat, right? He has to confront Morla, the aged one. And I feel like he's dismissing a lot of things here that there's importance in, like an experience and age. But he's just this is the hermit that he's trying to come to here, right? That's the bit that he is trying to ping our collective consciousness. Remember, I talked a little bit before about how setting our mind up, putting us in a particular place, putting symbolism in the background. The turtle symbolizes isolation that comes from depression and the loss of hope. The loss of hope from watching Artax sink beneath the mud, right? Yeah, they blurred out. I'm not going to spoiler us just yet because in the book it says it, obviously. And I feel like the name, I feel like he purposely picked a name that most people would pick a different name. Anyway, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. In the book, it answers it. This is one of the few things where I'm going to try not to spoiler us until we get there. But it's only a few more chapters till we get to that, because that's like halfway through the book. Right? Yeah. So that's what Morla, the Asian one, represents as isolation and essentially surrender to sadness. Because he has to confront them and fight them and convince them that they actually do care. It is the loss of hope. It is giving up. And he has to confront that and be like, no, we're not giving up. We got to keep moving. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to spoiler on that one, but it's significant. It is significant to the whole story. But them obscuring it so that you put in your own name produce the same result. In fact, maybe even better. Now, in the movie, they prevent. That's how they do it. They obscure it. So that you give it your own name. That's part of the secret. You can't do that in a book. So instead, he gives it a name with symbolism and a name that, well, if you were a real hippie family, you might have a mom with that kind of name, I guess. If you're the child of the hippies. Anyways, I was kind of the child of the hippies, and I went up with a name like Art. Okay. So, what the heck was I just talking about? I got a little sidetracked there. The German version is much longer, really. Huh. Apparently, there's a cartoon as well. I have never seen the cartoon. I would really like to see the cartoon, but we're gonna get to that after the book. I'm gonna see if I can't find it. Maybe we'll get a link to it. Maybe we can do like a watch party or something. See what I can do about that. Indeed, Melissa. Indeed. Yeah. Like I said, we're not going to spoiler the name just yet. Glad to see you, by the way. Yeah, I couldn't imagine a mom with that name married to that. Yeah, that's it's kind of named somebody that was born on a commune might have, and the dad, even in a book, doesn't come off as that way. Okay, so let's see. We were talking about Morla, and it mentions the Gamork again, and the Gamork. We'll talk more about him later. Oh, I wanted to fight the Gamork so bad when I was a kid. Oh, I used to obsess with it. Him and the Red Bull from the last unicorn. The Red Bull from the last unicorn I specifically wanted to eat. He looks so tasty. Ooh. I still would like to. I know it's a drawing, but oh, it looks like something you're supposed to bite. Anyways, so now we're finally actually are getting to the second chapter and the magical occult stuff in that. So he goes through the desert where there's no food. He fasts essentially, and uphill, downhill. From time to time, he realized that he had been walking as though in sleep. His mind had been in other realms from which they had returned none too willingly. I wanted to bring that up because I mean, he's literally walking up the mountain and having visions at this point. I've been referring to it as that. And he reaches the chasm. And we read this bit already about the grandiose horror of the sight cannot be described in words. A yawning cleft, perhaps a mile wide, twined its way through the land of the dead mountains. How deep it be, there was no way of knowing. And this is another one of them ones where he's kind of setting us up a little bit. He's putting these psychological things in the background. And at this point, we're talking about that reaching a new understanding, that crossing the veil, that I didn't know there were different versions of the last unicorn. Wow. The Last Unicorn is another awesome book. Um if we do a thing on it, it would have to be like though like I will think on this. I will think on this because we could possibly do The Last Unicorn. I gave that book away too. I gave it to Melissa. So I don't have a physical copy of that one either, I don't believe. Okay. So, where was I? Oh yes, we're at the chasm. There is a deep psychological thing going on there, and that's even why that's where you get that sudden connection. Remember, I was like, and then they hear Bastion scream when he screams from the book because the book scared it, and they hear it in the book. That's a moment of breaching. They are at the gap, the crossing of the abyss. This is a metaphor for the veil. The veil that he must pierce to achieve new understanding. And it is within that veil that he sees his new means of conveyance, the luck dragon, right? Um, I got to do another intermission. Be back in a moment. Okay, I return. Yeah, there is a lot of interesting things that can be talked about in The Last Unicorn. Most of it's towards the end of the book, but I don't know. Maybe we could use that one. I mean, there's certainly a beautiful description of magic. It wasn't intentionally written as an occult text like this, like the Never-Ending Story was. This thing, the guy that Michael Ende, when he wrote this, he was intending to create a transformation. He was intending to influence his audience through what he had done, through what he had written. And that's why he was so upset about the movie, was because he was worried it wasn't going to have that same effect. But he could have got what he wanted. He shouldn't have fought with him so much about didn't make part two was take so long to come out. Because yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was better. Would be better to have finished the course than to have left us on the mountain for 6 years before we came back down. Okay, so um, this is where he finds the this is where he finds the web, and the web again is important for that psychological background, and there's definitely some symbolism going on there. Um, yeah, like there's a whole lot of symbolism in a web. There's the pattern, there's the weaving. This is the world card in a way. This is also the interconnectedness. Web is significant in what else am I trying to say here? There's a bit that I'm missing. Oh yeah, Peter S. Beagle, the guy that wrote The Last Unicorn, clearly has an understanding of magic. He has he defines part of the understanding in those books. He clearly gets it. There's no way that guy's not a magician of some kind. Um, so the web is the interconnectedness of all things. It is kind of the material plane in this particular context. And then there's Ygramul themselves, the many. It is a collection of smaller consciousness becoming a big thing. It is a definition of whatever legion is. It is oh, how do I place this thing without putting the wrong words to it? It is hmm, there's well, it's a collective consciousness, but I want to say more than that. It's I was talking about before about when you try to really define it and put it in a box, it starts to move too much. It can't really be placed down in a box. And what I'm trying to say here, what I'm seeing here, there's an important piece that is defined by the thing itself. Like it's right there. I think we all, it's right there for the seeing. It's the speaking of what that really means that is difficult. Um, it's an amorphous thing that is together, but there's something. Oh, the words for it. There's this moment sometimes where you start hearing and sensing all of the things around you, right? And it actually gets distorting. It gets, the this is part of the thing that um Peter Carroll called Kronzon, I suppose. Right? We're back to that. Like a connective creative consciousness. Like there is a like this is something I've spoken to several people that have experienced. Peter Carroll kind of talks about it. It can become an overwhelming thing sometimes when you first really begin piercing that veil and become aware of things. There's this sudden buzz of sound and awareness, and it can and you need to be able to control even that and see it as one thing, to see it as Ygramul the many, rather than the buzzing of 1,000 different variables blasting through your mind. That is inside the web of interconnectedness of all things. There's this buzzing that can overwhelm and become maddening. And yet, when it bites you, when it bites you, like he says, like Ygramul says to Atreyu, when I bite you, you can go anywhere. You can imagine yourself into any place. This is what I'm talking about. This is that cacophony that is sometimes placed upon us in that enlightenment. There I guess it wasn't more that I couldn't have the words. It's that part of me hates acknowledging that thing, because this is what we think of when we talk about chaos in a bad sense, like the many voices, right? It's when it's placed into one thing, when it's given something, it becomes controlled, it becomes manageable, it becomes perceivable. Like Ygramul having the voice. Yes, the noise before you train yourself to pinpoint and navigate. So it's like I think other people, some people experience it differently. Someone that I was working with at one point, kind of teaching this stuff too. I try not to say names on the lives, but she spoke of 1,000 whispers all in her head. And it can be overwhelming. Um, there's just that thing can happen sometimes. The cacophony of chaos that can confront your perception when you first pierce through the veil and everything is all at once. You perceive the many, the interconnectedness, and if it all hits you at the same time, it can cause almost immediate overwhelm and even burnout. And that's what he's talking about confronting, but finding the way through that by pinpointing yourself to a location, finding your destination, like I talked about just a little while ago, right? With the having a destination that you're seeking in the mountain of sadness. He was looking for the shell mountain. Sensory overload. Yes, it can create a sensory overload. That moment of ecstasy. That's the thing, is it's not always a bad thing, right? I'm just talking about it's a negative thing, but we get to this is something that is very often experienced when people attempt the ecstatic states. Rage gnosis, ecstatic states, any of those, we work ourselves up to that excited oh, I can't pronounce that word. We excite ourselves to the point of hyperbole, and just right. This, if we don't keep it focused, just becomes when you work yourself up to that point and pierce the veil through frenzy. I forget what the word satori means off the top of my head, to be honest. I know I've heard that word. I think that's tantric word, but either way, there's yeah. I want to see if we're on the same page. Let me just Google that real quick. I know I recognize the word. Oh, it's from Zen Buddhism. All right. No, that's not exactly what I'm talking about, because, like, with the Zen, I mean, you might reach that stuff with the Zen thing, that moment. But those that reach that moment through that, it's going to come in a calmer way. It might still create an overload with the like the sudden overconnectedness, but it's going to be a different, and it'd be just before you had that insight. So I suppose, yeah, okay. What the satori is kind of what you're wanting to reach for in that moment. Keep yourself to keep yourself on focus, to keep yourself on your mission. The power of will, right? This is where I remember I said I was percolating, and it was going to need to come back to me before I could put it in place. The power of the will and then wanting to get to a particular destination, right? And I mentioned before about when you try to grip reality, you can often, like you're trying to pick a rose, find yourself with a handful of thorns instead of a flower because you tried to grip too tightly. Lost your love when you used the word mine. Like, right? Remember the song I talked about, the song lyrics earlier? Love is a rose and you better not pick it. It only grows upon the vine. Handful of thorns and you know you've missed it. Lost your love when you use the word mine. There's we're back to that. We're back to it's percolating. Um Power of the will cannot be too intent at times. It needs to be it needs to be ridden rather than driven. It needs to be, well, you brought up the Zen, and that helps a little bit because it needs to be kind of flowed into while directing the flow at the same time. And that's part of how we get through this moment, the cacophony, the storm without, and become the eye of the storm, which bursts both the I, because we are the inner perception. We are the thing within. We are the thing that all the overconnected things are connecting to. We are not them. They are outside of us. They are separate. They are not part of the I. They are the things that are without. They do not have influence except for the influence that they are allowed. And so, hey, Kiana, this is what we need to remember, that we go to where we wish to go. And though it says that this bite will kill you, what we're talking about here is a moment of ego death. Because as you may suspect, even if you've never seen any of these stories before, is that Atreus survives this moment. He doesn't die in the next chapter, right? And this is not the last we've seen of Falcor either. But this is important that there is that moment, that willing to accept. Not only is there's that bit of an ego death that comes in that moment in a way, but also the willingness, right? That's how much the drive needs to be in that moment. Even though you're flowing, you're submitting to your own will by allowing Ygramul to bite you. You're submitting to the fate that gets you to where you want to go. Right? But there is also, you need to be so, through will so powerful, your intent so great that you are willing to give everything in that moment towards your goal, towards reaching that next step of enlightenment, towards claiming the luck dragon, which he will now be riding from here. Okay. So, let's see, where are we at? That is primary points that I wanted to get through for today's book club. And I'm not saying we're done. I'm not like, oh, okay, I'm out of here. I don't have a vape today. I'm starting to really want a cigarette. But we will leave off on that for the moment. So, the Gamork. We've talked a little bit about the Gamork. We're going to talk more about him. Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Fetch beast riding flight. I'm not quite sure. Like, fetch beast. Once again, this is a thing that sounds very familiar, but I'm having trouble bringing anything to my mind. Falcor, we're going to be talking about him a lot in the next little while. I think we're going to read 2 chapters again next time. The chapters that we will read for next time are, let's see. I know it's the Gnomics. Oh, you know what? We're going to read 3 for next time because I remember these ones and they're just, I'm going to want to talk about those 3 together. And the Wind Giants is something different. So we're reading 5, 6, and 7 next time. The Gnomics, the 3 Magic Gates, and the Voice of Silence. I remember how that worked out. Oh, yeah, okay. I mean, I know what a fetch is. I suppose, okay, yeah, I suppose a fetch beast would be just a beast that was a fetch. Similar to, if I remember correctly, a fetch is a type of created spirit that kind of like a call spirit. Like it's essentially a created ghost. It's a spirit that has been made from a creature. So a fetch beast. That'd be like Boris in the Cash Cow Sigil. If I remember correctly, as for what a fetch is. But most of my learning of Welsh cunning wasn't in this lifetime, so I could be a bit off. Zen Buddhism, probably read about in other lives, but I've never practiced it myself directly. I mean, I've done some stuff. Don't get me wrong. I've been in that mental paradigm a few times in this life, maybe before, but it's certainly not. Anyways, way off subject. So, what was I? I feel like I just stopped in the middle of a subject there a moment ago. Um, so yeah, we're gonna read those 3 next time. because that is going to. I remember those and how they're connected, and I'm going to want to be able to talk about all three at once. I'm also quite excited for to read those chapters. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. Um, Welch cunning is fascinating. Like to me, this is when people say witchcraft, that's what I immediately think of. Hold on, apparently I'm gonna have a little coughing fit. I'm really craving a cigarette. Can I stop? Okay, so the Gamork. That's what I was wanting to talk about. The Gamork, I've been thinking a lot about what that being represents. And I think maybe part of it is anger, because wolf tends to represent ferocity to the European mind, right? And that's definitely where he's going with this. He's trying to make the Gamork very terrifying and scary and hunger. But when we get to the Gamork, it is something that was spawned from the nothing, something that benefits from the nothing and what it is done. It is something that wants everything stripped away. It is predatory, right? Oh, I wanted to fight the Gamork so bad. You know, that scene where Treyu and the Gamork almost fight. And, you know, there's certainly rage there. And I think in some ways it might be a representation of violence itself, because you know Atreyu tries to fight it, but we'll get to that. I'm way skipping ahead, but the Gamork is a character I've always been fascinated with, even though I often get its name wrong. But I'm sure now it's called the Gamork, and yeah, but that's also because I've always been fascinated with wolves and beasts, and that's one of the characters, like the turtle, I have to remember. Indeed. I suppose as part of the dissolution force, it is you know, when we get to it, it's he talks about how people that don't have dreams are easier to control. It wants to keep people herded. It's like I think part of what he's getting at with it even is keeping people moving with keeping people to stay in the flock, because the wolf wants the sheep to stay in the flock so they're easier to be preyed upon. And one of the things that I have to keep in mind for myself as we're going back over this, 'Cause like with Morla, you know, to me a turtle represents wisdom and well, it represents mystery and magic and it's got this whole totem thing going on, and I tend to want to put that into Morla, but it's not there. That's not what he's up to with Morla. Morla is isolation. He picked a turtle because a turtle was just in a swamp for one, but it's something that can pull into itself and be all by itself. He points that a couple times. That's why he has it talking to itself because it had no one else to talk to, right? That's what he's talking about there is the isolation that comes from sadness and the loss of hope. And the trail loses his path and must confront that. He loses his path and as in loses our tracks and his vehicle, right? His means forward, his path, his vehicle. And then he has to confront the loss of all hope and the wanting to isolate and give up, even though you have managed to keep yourself from sinking into the sadness. There's still that once you see things as completely undefeatable, see the approach before you as an unmovable object, it is very tempting to say, oh, well, I've seen this pattern repeat 100 times. There's nothing I can do. There's no way to win. This is just how it always goes. There is that tendency to want to isolate, to give up. And he had to reason his way out of that and prove to that part of himself. Because you gotta realize all of Fantasia is also we're talking about the inner world, everyone's personal inner world. And he's trying to work through these concepts in the person, take them out. He's priming us for a way to think by the things he has put into the backgrounds of our mind with the different symbolism. And he's taking us up the mountain. He's getting us to put aside a mundane world. He's getting us to put aside our sadness and this repeating of patterns that always stay the same and believing that everything's just mundane and the sadness that comes along with that. Because he's writing this for someone who is leaving childhood, right? This was intended to be a story for a young adult, someone who's leaving childhood. It's someone you're supposed to be reading this when you're like 13, 14 years old, somewhere around there, when you're just leaving childhood. You're walking out of the 100-acre woods. And part of you is very sad walking out of that. And that's Morla. But we can find more beautiful adventures. The daydream does not have to end with going into adulthood. In fact, adulting to me is just accepting domestication. I do not. I was told that I did not have to grow up, so I didn't. I do. I did not become domesticated. I mean, I'm an adult in the sense that I behave. I take care of myself. I take care of myself the best that I can, etc. But the things they call becoming an adult, putting away childish things, what we're talking about is giving up on joy. That's the demon. That's the creature. That's that point on the material plane that they're trying to get us to focus on. They were trying to get us to focus on to strip away magic and joy. That's right. When you go to find the 1,000-acre woods, indeed, my love. I live right next to the 1,000-acre woods. But there's that's it. that thing that they call growing up. That is the bogus bullcrap that they are trying to get us to believe. That is where they are trying to take us. That is how they steal reality from us, is by the lie of growing up, of becoming domesticated, of accepting the box that they want to place you in. And that is perhaps what the Gamork is. He is the one that is trying to kill Atreyu. He is the one that's trying to stop Atreyu from completing his mission. He is the one that wants to put you back in the box so that the nothing can win. He wants to stop the mission. He wants to keep you from rising above and seeing the beauty that is in all things and is the all thing. Indeed, that is absolutely one of the boxes. That is one of the many boxes. But that's what the Gamork is. The Gamork is the one putting us in the boxes. Yes, now I see you. And that Gamork, that thing, he represents that facet of the mental plane that we've been tried, that the world tries to convince us is material, mundane reality. That lie of growing up, of becoming an adult. There's a maturity that comes with age. Don't get me wrong. There's a maturity that comes with age, and it's important and it's valuable. Experience creates wisdom, creates understanding, creates larger context. No matter how intelligent you are, your wisdom will increase with age. There's beauty in aging, in having decades of experience behind you. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the submission to the lies of domestication that come with becoming an adult. And that is what it is that Michael Ende is trying to help us escape. That's why Atreyu is someone that hunts purple buffalo in the ocean of grass. I mean, it's really a very stereotypical thing, the way he puts it. As I think about it, I was talking about seeing things from a European perspective, but that's the wildness he is talking about. Okay. So, yeah. And there's a lot more to say on this subject. The over domesticate the there was a word I used to use all the time. Was it over domestication? I think that's it. I'm gonna have to go back and look at my own stuff. That's why it's a good thing that I do the things I do on YouTube, because gotten out of the habit of writing stuff down. I keep just going on YouTube and saying it, but we're going to get back to that. But the over domestication of mankind. Yes. I think that is where we find the deep secret of how they have tried to take magic from us. And it doesn't mean that we all have to be, you know, hunter gatherers living on the plains and chasing beasts that could kill us. To be clear, that's not a lot of what was going on in North America either. Not everybody was chasing buffalo. There was all kinds of different civilizations, and not everybody was even migratory. There was entire civilizations going on here, trade routes and cities larger than anything going on in Europe at the time. These things happened over here. But that thing that he sees there with the people on the plains hunting buffalo, that thing that he's trying to express with that, as problematic as I'm suddenly feeling like that kind of is, but I'm just going to let that slide. That thing that he is trying to express there, that is part of what he is trying to encourage people to keep a hold of. I think I'm seeing that a little bit better now for the first time. And seeing it from this other perspective helps me better define what it is I'm trying to see. Sometimes, the closer you look, the harder it is to define something. And the thing we most need to understand in all of this is exactly what it is they had us focused on. What it is that makes up the patterns. What is it that keeps us focused on this lie that they have created and got our entire collective consciousness to focus on, in a belief that this part of the mental plane is the material mundane world. This believes that how they've made us believe that this map is the territory, and gotten us to the point that we're literally stumbling over things that are really there because the map shows us something else. But we're on the verge of that, because look at what's going on. I was talking earlier about the death throes of the old world, the monsters of the old world. They're breaking themselves on that now. They're very soon going to find out, as they take away everything from the farmers, that there's not going to be any food. They took away their workers, they tariffed the fertilizer, and they believe somehow the money itself is going to make it all still work. That they at least be able to buy enough for themselves. But it's not, you can't eat money. It makes me think of them guys that went down in that submarine to see the Titanic, believing that if they just simply paid enough money to go there, they'd be safe. Truly believed their money would keep them safe. And then they found out in a matter of milliseconds that that's not how it works. This is hubris. And that hubris, is hubris. Money is a symbol, though, for their power. The power of this. Money is a symbol for the power of that lie that we're discussing. It is a symbol of, that's one of the ones where they're like, Well, who's going to make money with that? As if people can't make money from it, it can't happen, right? It right on the verge of something here, right on the edge of an understanding of what it is, the heart of the lie. Once we find the heart of the lie, we can undo it. And that's again part of what this book is about, is helping us see that. I mean, obviously Michael Ende doesn't know the whole thing either, but he's guiding us closer to that thing. And eventually one of us one day will see it true, and then we can remove it. But it's the money is a symbol of their power, and that power comes that what the lie is that makes them think the map is stronger. Symbolism happens in dreams for sure, but this is the money is somehow a manifest metaphor. This is the thing that gives them their esteem. This is the thing that they have tried to turn the material world, taken the essence of it, and pulled it into this money. They believe that they've truly destroyed things, that they can take the value from things and suck it out and make garbage that can be thrown away. Oh, indeed, Kiana. Indeed. This is, once I give it a name, like this is the way that I see things. If I am able to finally give it a name, then I can give it a face. And then I can fight the metaphor directly. Because that is how metaphors work. This is how magic works. This is our place in this thing. Being the sorcerers and spell workers of this. We find the thought form, give it a name, give it a face, make it into a tulpa, and then kill the tulpa. This is how we work. This is how we take those things out. This is how we can take away their momentum. That's one thing that is finally getting real clear in my mind as to how we can do our work, how we can make our influence. We find the things, the pinch points of pressure where what it is that they're using to influence a certain thing, the thought forms around a problem. Give it a name it in a way that is it, that correlates with it, with the thing that it creates. When you give it a name, you can give it a face, and if it has a name and a face, you can kill it. Yes. By naming it. We may need to do it more than once because this is metaphors in motion, right? We're killing the momentum. We're breaking apart the thought form. But there's a lot of stuff working on the material plane that is going to kind of reform those things. But the more we break the momentum apart, but we have to really get into the thing first. We need, for this one, we have to understand it before we can name it. It has to be a name that fits it. It has to be a real name, not just call it Johnny and be on our way, right? Oh, I get what you mean by that. Yeah, indeed. That's exactly what I'm saying. It will grow new heads, and we will keep slicing. But I want to find this head. There's one head in particular that interests me, and it is the one of this lie that keeps the you can't just call it adulthood. Domestication. But there's more than that. There's a symbolism in the money and the hubris there. But that was just momentarily useful. That's not necessarily going to be that deep of a thing on its own. But what is it about the vampirism that they create to extract the value out of things so that they can be thrown away and useless? Understand the way that they break beauty so that they can possess it. There's a bit there, more there to be thinking on. Okay, so we're getting close to that. We're getting real close to that 3 hour mark. I am super craving a cigarette, and I also happen to know there's flatbread pizza and chicken waiting for me in the house. So, um, yeah, I think at this point, like if y'all have anything more to say on that particular topic, absolutely continue. That is like the magnus opus of my whole thing at this point, right? Ever since May 5th, 2012, I've been focused on one thing. Before that, I was focused on something else. But now, yeah, well, we're not going to go. I'm not going just yet. I'm going to open the floor up to a question and answer session. We got about like, I'll be on for like another 10, 15 minutes. Um, yeah, for now, I'm going to think on that. That has been, because that, like I say, this figuring out what to do and how to fix the balance in the planes has been my primary focus ever since the person was removed. That was the central point for that. And I suppose now, eventually, what I'm trying to do is find a way to ride off of the momentum of that into a ritual form. Like reenactment of that process on the things that were created by Yihad, being that was at that central point. Work our way down. Now, I keep using that name. I want y'all to be clear. Yihad and Yahweh are not the same being. I'm not talking about Hebrew mythology. This is a being that influenced all monotheism, but those are all just facets of a thing, right? Right. This isn't like us versus the Christian God. Well, first of all, it's already over, despite like that short I did the other day. I mean, the thing's been done. That's been done. But I'm realizing the enactment of that moment, the momentum created from it, can be realigned, can be reused to form new copas of that we can immediately destroy and continue breaking down the ways in which it was influencing this world. Yeah. I think I'm getting somewhere for once. I think I'm on to something. I think we're on to something here. Broke my rubber band in the end of my beard there. This, like I keep saying about these lives being means, not an end. This was good. This is cool. I have and I've been having a lot of that with these lives lately, where as we're discussing the things, I come to new understandings of ideas myself. But this one's big. I'm gonna think about that for a while, but I can totally see. Oh yeah, I mean I don't necessarily. I'm not talking. That's what I'm trying to say. Like personally, I see monotheism in all of its ways as too hierarchical. But if you can take that part out of it and transmute Christianity, I mean, there's millions of Christians in this world. I'm not saying all Christianity or all Judaism or Zoroastrianism or Islam, any of them need to be completely just removed, right? I'm nor yeah, none of my business. I'm talking about. That's why I was clarifying that Yihad is a different being. This is something that did create those religions, but those were just things that it used. These were tools, and it is not the people of those religions' faults. Even though we are watching their religions kind of crash all over the place right now because of the lack of that. Yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, like I'm not gonna go out. Well, in that transmutation process, they could certainly use a lot of critiquing. There's not a lot of necessity in those religions being like completely wiped out because the being behind them that was the problem is gone, right? So the being that we would be creating at this point and doing that same thing too would not be connected to those religions. It would be something connected to that force that is making us accept the destruction of the beauty around us, making us allow joy to be murdered. That thing that is trying to put us in the box, the Gomorrah. Talking about fighting the Gomorrah. Yeah. All right. All right. There we go. I'm talking about fighting the Gomorrah. So we need to really correlate and understand this concept, but perhaps we have its name. Once we've gotten a hold of it, stamped the name onto its head. But we need the understanding still. Yes. I think we have something here. So now we need to understand what that thing is that Michael Ende was expressing with the Gomorrah. And we'll be talking about him more as the series continues. And we have got a long time between now and the next May 5th, which I suppose if we're going to be doing this, got to do it on the day, right? We're going to use that momentum. We got to use the momentum of the right day. So I'll have a lot of time to prepare. But I see the beginning of a plan here. Okay, good night, Black Unigriffin. I am going to be ending real soon here myself. I'm pretty excited. I've just gotten myself pretty hyped up about this idea. And yeah, this is this has been a very productive live. I have really enjoyed this. Any of you that haven't, don't forget to like and subscribe. Possibly share. Well, I don't know if you want to. You even can share lives, but yeah, don't forget to like the live and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. And sweet dreams, Black Unigriffin. Yeah, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not Yahweh. It's Yehad. Okay, Yahweh is one of the pieces that were used in the creation of monotheism. There is a being that we call Yehad, which is a different being. That is the original and one of the original influencers with the creation of monotheism. Now, of course, you have to understand you don't have to believe everything I say. I want that to be very clear. Yeah? Not everything I say is always going to be the absolute end all truth. This is what I believe. This is the theory that I am working on, and I have seen results from what I have done. It's possible I've been making tulpas the whole time. And that first one is going to be that I did will be no different than the one we're going to do again on the next May 5th, which let's see, 2012 and then 2020, yeah, 2027. It'll be 15 years after the first one. You know, all I know is I did a thing and got results. And we can redo that process and continue that momentum. So, I mean, I very much believe that I am right, that the being called Yehad is the one that started this drive towards civilization and monotheism and placing other people in boxes, and essentially the whole concept of hierarchy. What it comes down to is hierarchy. This ultra hyped pecking order that humanity has become obsessed with and put this power of money into. Um, bit more there, but I'm not seeing it quite yet. Not seeing it quite yet. We're getting there. Definitely going to be thinking on that. We've got quite a while. Placing bits of dicks in boxes is too, indeed. That's another interesting story there. Because I mean, the way I read the Old Testament, that's the only thing I can figure is in the Ark of the Covenant. And that's a box of dick tips. Marching around in the desert with a big box, they put all the tips of their dicks in. Because the symbol of the covenant is why they cut the foreskin off. It's to symbolize that covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant, they put the proof of the covenant into the box. So yeah, it's a box full of dick tips. Monotheists are weird, man. Anyways, get myself in trouble saying that kind of stuff on YouTube. But yeah, I don't. And that's another thing. It's sad that I even have to say this, but religions and peoples are not the same thing, right? Just like nations and people are not the same thing. Someone's genetic background does not determine their worth. And people have a right to believe what they want to believe. The problem is when they start telling other people how to believe too. So that'd be the biggest thing with the monotheists is if they at least learn to quit telling other people how to believe or thinking their beliefs give them the right to do things to other people in the name of their God or whatever, in the name of their religion, one way or another. Whether it's in the name of their God or because they believe God promised them that land, or however it works. Anyways, yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and call it here. So until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.